Hello there. I hope that you're doing well. Welcome to the new lecture of the Susie Uncensored series. It has been a while since I recorded a lecture of this series, and it was due to the fact that the past month was a rather tough month for me when it comes to my personal life, and therefore I was not really in the mood to try and record my voice whilst executing. This means that I was simply just focused on executing properly and not having to think about, okay, I need to share my thought process vocally right now. Whilst the events in my personal life were taking place, I shared inside of the mentorship, of course, what was going on, and luckily things have gotten better. So I'm grateful to be able to say that to you. I anticipate to begin recording my internal thought process whilst in front of the charts soon again vocally, so that you can anticipate way more lectures of this series to come. Let us first begin with taking a look at the overall higher time frame chart, because that's very important to note when looking at the recording that I'm about to break down live to you. Here we're on the hourly chart, and I already described this during a market review, but what our drawn liquidity for this week was the current July low. And the reason why this was the drawn liquidity was because this was the low where the most sales liquidity was engineered inside of the current leg higher on Nasdaq. What's very important to note that in front of that target of the July low, there was one specific area that could function as a potential roadblock on price. And the roadblock that I'm referring to is the following. It was this candle's high, the 20,016 and a quarter price level. In my execution, you will see me have this level on my chart. And this level was my POI for the whole day, because what I was looking at was the following. On the day of Wednesday, we expanded a lot throughout the morning session, and also throughout the London session prior, and also throughout the Asia session prior. So to me, automatically, I'm already not really interested in trying to continue looking for shorts, because we already reached a deep discount of the current range for the day. So when it is the case, I wait for the market to reach a very specific price level, a level where I'm anticipating a reaction from, and when that level gets reached during the right time window, and I see the signs become present, we're going to turn around. So we're going to offer buy side delivery. I can go long looking for buy side liquidity to be the next drawn liquidity. The reason why this price level specifically was my POI, my point of interest, was due to the following. When we take a look at this delivery, we first of all see that we had this big downclose candle right here, which formed prior to the formation of the July low. This is a bullish order block, meaning this downclose candle has to function as support on price if we're in fact going to expand higher. The reason why this downclose candle was a bullish order block was due to the following. What I want you to see is that we purged sell side liquidity with that large downclose candle. We formed a low and then immediately displaced towards the upside. That right there shows to me that that downclose candle should now function as support on price. Notice that it also formed inside of a CB on the left. What we then see is that inside of this bullish order block, we see the market structure shift pattern playing out, where we see the market sell off during the Asia session, creating a CB. The market retraces in that CB during the London session. It forms a high. We then reprice towards the downside, purging sales liquidity. We form a low and then displace towards the upside with a BC. At this point, we're monitoring to see if this high will now function as support on price. Now what I want you to see is that inside the creation of this BC, the third candle which set up the creation of the BC did not reprice all the way into the low. And that right there is a signature that shows to me that this price range was not balanced yet. And therefore it's a very strong support zone. And that means that the moment we reach that level, I anticipate us to have a hard time getting through it. So therefore I was looking for longs during this afternoon session, and I will now walk you through the delivery and show you what I was thinking in the moment. Here we are on the 50-second chart of Nasdaq, and what I want you to see is that Nasdaq dropped below the price level that I outlined on the hourly chart. We dropped into that old CB's price range, that's this blue box. I've extended that to the right, and I was monitoring to see whether or not we would form a low during the macro of 12:45 to 1:15 p.m. I was monitoring to see if the signatures would become present that would signal to me that we would form a low and then expand towards the upside. Now, what I'm waiting for specifically at this moment is the following. I'm waiting for the time to be right for a low formation. This gets confirmed by SMT. And I wait for displacement back above the level that I was looking for to be my point of interest. This level right here. I bought the moment that we displaced above it. I want you to see that this big upclose candle right here signals displacement. And what I want you to see as well, I'm just going to pause the recording for a moment, is the following. I want you to see that inside of this wick right here, on even a lower time frame than the 15-second chart, you're likely going to see the bullish breaker formation. Since we form a low here, form a high, lower low, higher high. So now you anticipate that this candle right here is going to function as support on price. Notice that the candle that displaces towards the upside is way larger than the candles prior, meaning that signals that at the right time, once we saw a cracking correlation on the lows, yes, I will show this to you after we went through the full recording. I will take you with me into intermarket relationship on these lows because there was not SMT in the way you think there was SMT. The moment we displace above that level with this large upclose candle, to me, I'm anticipating all of this delivery right here to get overrun, meaning all of this back and forth delivery engineered a lot of buy liquidity above these highs. The retracement into this wick here is again a buying opportunity. Why? Because we're buying in a deep discount relative to the overall range. This downclose candle should function as support on price. I actually took a pyramid once we traded away from it, as you can see, and I was anticipating big green candles to come soon. My final target were these relatively equal highs up here, but because I was trading against the higher time frame order flow, I was already aware of the fact that we might find resistance inside of this CB right here. If you would look at this CB, you would see that there is still room left to be repriced into. Notice that we already repriced into it here and here, but notice that we never reached the high of the CB. So therefore, there's still room for that CB to get rebalanced. And therefore, I was anticipating this to be a solid partial as well. Notice that this lines up, by the way, with this large downclose candle here. At this point, I'm monitoring to see whether or not a BC will form here. The reason why I'm monitoring to see if a BC will form here is due to the following. We traded above this high, which set up on the 1-minute chart this run lower. So that right there is a CSD on a 1-minute chart as well. Where we saw CSD on the 15-second chart here, we also saw CSD now on the 1-minute chart. If you were not long here on a 50-second chart, then this is the wrong opportunity here. IOFET. This is a beautiful reaction of that BC, and that's exactly what you want to see. The moment that this candle was sprinting to my eyes, I was immediately drawn to the following. This downclose candle should now function as support on price. The reason why is due to the following. This downclose candle is now a very important reference point for IBDA, meaning I'm monitoring to see if we will reprice back into it and then offer a new opportunity to get long to continue higher. This is an immediate rebalance here. I pyramided there and notice how I'm throwing my stop. I'm throwing my stop every single time that I'm pyramiding because I understand that if order flow is in fact bullish, every single range high should get displaced above and should function as support on price. Here you can see the executions, and at this point I'm simply waiting. In my mind, my stop is already even here, below this candle's low, because there's absolutely no way that we should trade below this low when we're in such close proximity to the buy side liquidity target up here. Notice as well that this candle's low is also the low of the candle that displaced above this down close candle. And I already outlined that this down close candle should function as support on price, and that we do not want to see the range get displaced below. Immediate rebalance has taken place, so at this point in time it's simply a waiting game. It's either a break even, so we either roll over, trading back into that BC and therefore taking my stop out. If that would have occurred, I would have manually closed the position. But for now, I'm simply monitoring to see if this down close candle would function as support on price. And notice, by the way, that every single time we repriced back into it, it was a new buying opportunity if you were not long yet. Meaning, if you were anticipating this buy side liquidity to be made jacked, then every single time that we retrace, it's a buying opportunity. Every single time that we retrace lower into, for example, this downward candle, it's a buying opportunity because you anticipate this buy side liquidity to be made jacked. Notice, however, that this trade is rather advanced because it was based on the 15-second chart. Here you can see the target being met and I partialed accordingly. At this point, I was monitoring to see whether or not we would continue and utilize this CB as an inversion value gap or not. But right now, it's looking like it will. But keep in mind that it's not confirmed yet, meaning I need to see that CB function as support on price. And if it doesn't function as support on price, this price range here, then I know I need to get out because it's possible that we're going to reprice lower again and fall back into the range since the higher time frame order flow is still bearish, and therefore we need to be mindful of that. Notice that I again took partials here because that was a partial based on the 1 p.m. open coming up, and therefore was monitoring to see how that would get utilized. Notice that we formed a BC here. This BC has to function as support on price because this BC formed inside of the leg above my target. The target being this buy side liquidity pool. So if this BC gets displaced below, then in my mind I already know I need to get out. Invalidation of this BC is below this low. At this point, I'm simply monitoring to see if whether or not we're going to continue higher or not. Partials have already been taken, profits have already been taken, and everything else that takes place is just extra. Meaning we either get stopped in profit or we get a new run higher. Notice that we close below this BC, so now I'm monitoring to see if it will function as an inversion value gap on price. If it does, then I'm likely going to get taken out. And if that occurs, I'm all good with that. If we would reclaim this BC, then I anticipate that BC to function as support on price again. At this point, I'm already content with the fact that I'm likely going to get taken out due to this reaction of that BC's price range. I'm not neglecting the fact that we might still run higher, but in my mind, I'm already preparing myself to potentially get stopped out. Why? Because this reaction, the displacement below this BC, meaning the big closure below it, is not a signature that I'm a fan of. I want to see continuation in the form of the falling taking place when my target has been met. To see the market retrace and immediately begin to run higher. But when that does not occur, I know, okay, order flow might change and we might fall back into the range from this low to this high. Waiting to see. At this point, it's a patience game, and I know that some of you are like, can this just move? Can this just do and decide what it's going to do? And that right there is just something you need to be wary of. You understand that patience has to be developed and you need to follow a strict set of rules when it comes to profit taking, when it comes to trade management. And this is how I manage my position. So it's possible right now that we're still going to continue, or it's possible that we're going to roll over. Why? Because this down close candle is the final line of defense for continuation higher. If this down close candle gets displaced below, we also displace below this BC here and the invalidation of that BC, and therefore I know I need to get out. And as you can see, we're slowly drawing towards the downside, drawing towards that stop loss, and eventually it will get taken out. But this is how you scalp based on micro market structure, where you simply know that we should form a low around this price level. You look to the left and you determine what's the logical draw on liquidity. This high immediately pops out, and then you monitor to see if we will draw towards that high, draw towards the remaining part of the CB, which is yet to be rebalanced. And therefore, that was the overall thought process behind the setup. Let's now take a look at what was present inside of this low formation here. By the way, one more thing that I want you to investigate is the overall trade management based on my thought process. Meaning, I want you to investigate how I enter and trail positions. Meaning, I want you to investigate what makes me want to enter and what makes me want to pyramid and what makes me want to trail my stop once I've pyramided. Because you need to understand that this is the exact application of how I taught you to pyramid. Meaning every single time we pyramid, we trail or stop to the new invalidation level. And that's how we're in line with order flow. Because you need to understand that these high frequency trading algorithms, they push price, meaning they reprice within certain time windows. And when they do, price has to get pushed. And in this case, it was to the upside. And when it occurs, you need to understand that every single fractal range high has to get displaced above and then function as support on price. Meaning every single range high should now function as a range low. And if that range high doesn't function as a range low, but instead we see it fall below that price level, then we know that we might not be in bullish order flow. And we need to investigate whether or not that order flow will continue. And I'm talking about the advanced ranges now and their application to the smallest possible scale. So that's something for you to investigate moving forward. Here we're on the 15-second chart of Nasdaq and ES, and what I want you to see is the following. I want you to see how the wicks showed that both Nasdaq as ES made lower lows, meaning you can see clearly that Nasdaq made a low right here, whilst ES also made a low here. Notice that if you would, however, pay attention to the bodies, you would see the following. You would see that this low right here, the low of this body, has been extended to the right. If we take a look at ES and we pay attention to the same candle, its respective low, and we extend it to the right, we can see that the bodies never close or open below it, whilst on Nasdaq they do. And that was the signature that confirmed to me that SMT was present. Notice that we also had the wick SMT inside of the absolute low formation, where Nasdaq created a low here, the lowest price, whilst ES created the lowest price already on this down close candle. And the candles that formed afterwards, these two candles, they created relatively equal lows. So where Nasdaq created lower lows, you can see that ES created equal lows, and that's also SMT. I know that these types of SMT are hard to spot. I know that they're hard to see. But notice that in every single reversal, every single retracement, every single fractal market make a buy model or sell model, you will see SMT taking place. It always occurs because it signals that the time is right for expansion to take place. And that is what I was looking for once we traded into the price level that I outlined, this big fat red line. Notice that every single candle below it, right here, was just doing one thing. Price was being held, meaning it was being held inside of a range and time distortion was taking place. This delivery right here is just back and forth, 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 until the time was right for the market to clearly form a low and a buy program to unfold. And when was the time right? When the SMT was confirmed and we traded back above that price level. That right there is an advanced level of understanding IPTA. And that is what I'm trying to teach you during this lecture of the Uncensored series. I hope that you found this insightful, and I look forward to catching up with you soon in more live recordings again. Be safe.